living in a world where people care for one another, and the importance of feeling connected that are founded in the earliest years of our lives.
The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace courtyard as Catherine stood at the tall window of her private chambers. Her fingers traced the cool glass while she watched the gardeners tend to the roses below. Everything looked normal from the outside, but inside the walls of Kensington Palace, nothing felt normal anymore. William had been different for weeks now. The man who once filled rooms with his warm laughter now moved through their home like a ghost. His shoulders carried a weight that seemed to grow heavier each day, and his eyes held a distance that made Catherine's heart ache. She had tried countless times to reach him, to understand what was pulling him away from their family. From her, their children had noticed too. George had asked why Papa seemed so sad during breakfast, and little Charlotte had climbed into William's lap the evening before, pressing her tiny hands against his cheeks as if trying to bring back his smile. Even Louis, barely old enough to understand complex emotions, had grown quieter, sensing the tension that filled their usually happy home. Catherine remembered the exact moment she first saw that look in William's eyes. It was 3 weeks ago. After he returned from a private meeting with his father, he had walked into their bedroom that night, loosened his tie with shaking hands, sat on the edge of their bed without saying a word. When she asked what was wrong, he simply shook his head and said, "Some things are bigger than what we want. Catherine, some things we cannot change." Since that night, their conversations had become careful and polite, like strangers navigating around a dangerous topic. They discussed the children's schedules, upcoming engagements, and daily routines, but the deeper connection they had always shared seemed to slip further away with each passing day. Catherine felt like she was watching. Her husband disappeared before her eyes, and she was powerless to stop it. The palace staff had begun to whisper. She noticed how they looked at her with a mixture of pity and concern, their eyes quickly darting away when she caught them staring. The private secretary spoke in hushed tones that stopped the moment she entered a room. Even their closest friends had started asking gentle questions about how she was coping. Though they never directly mentioned what they were concerned about, Catherine had always been strong, but this situation was testing her in ways she had never imagined. She had married into a life where personal struggles often became public spectacles. Her private pain was dissected by the media and analyzed by people who had never met them. The thought of their family falling apart under the world's watchful eyes made her feel sick. That morning, as she stood at the window, Catherine made a decision. She would not let their love story end without a fight. She would find a way to reach William, to understand what was tearing him apart, and to help him find his way back to their family. She had no idea that by the end of that day, everything would change in ways she could never have prepared for. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her turn. William appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his formal attire for the day's engagements. His face was carefully composed, but Catherine could see the storm raging behind his eyes. He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something that made her blood run cold. It was not just sadness or stress. It was the look of a man who had already said goodbye in his heart. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tonight, after the children are asleep." Catherine nodded, though every instinct told her she was not ready for whatever conversation was coming. As William left for his appointments, she remained at the window, watching until his car disappeared through the palace gates. She had no way of knowing that this would be the last normal morning they would share as a family. The hours that followed felt like an eternity to Catherine. She moved through her scheduled activities like an actress playing a role, smiling at the right moments, making appropriate comments, and maintaining the perfect composure expected of her position. But inside, her mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. During her visit to a children's hospital that afternoon, a young girl named Emma, no more than 8 years old, looked up at her with curious eyes and asked, "Are you sad, Princess Catherine? You look like my mummy did when she was worried about something big." The innocent question nearly broke Catherine's carefully maintained facade. She knelt down to Emma's level, forcing a gentle smile as she assured the child that everything was fine. But the little girl's words echoed in her mind long after she left the hospital. Back at the palace, Catherine found herself in the nursery, watching George practice his piano lessons. His small fingers moved across the keys with determination, occasionally hitting wrong notes, but continuing with the resilience that reminded her so much of William. Charlotte sat nearby, coloring a picture of their family, carefully choosing different shades of blue for what she called Papa's happy colors. Louis played with his toy cars on the carpet, making soft whooshing sounds as he pushed them around an imaginary track. These were the moments that mattered most to Catherine. These quiet, ordinary moments that made up the fabric of their life. Together, the thought of anything threatening this peace, this happiness, filled her with a fierce protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. She had always known she would do anything for her children, but now she realized she would do anything to keep their family whole. As evening approached, Catherine found herself changing clothes 3 times, unable to decide what to wear for a conversation that could change everything. She finally settled on a simple sweater and jeans, wanting to look like herself rather than the public figure she had become. When William arrived home, she watched him interact with the children during dinner, noting how he seemed to every detail of their faces, as if he were trying to capture these moments forever. After tucking the children into bed, Catherine and William found themselves alone in their private sitting room. The space that had once felt cozy and intimate now seemed vast and cold. William stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped behind his back, staring into the flames as if they held answers to questions he could not voice. "You said we needed to talk," Catherine began, her voice steadier than she felt. "I've been waiting all day, and I think I deserve to know what is happening to our family." William turned to face her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw that Catherine instinctively took a step toward him. But he held up a hand, stopping her approach, and that simple gesture communicated more than words ever could. He was not just physically distant, he was emotionally preparing to leave. "There are things about our position, about my future role, that I have never shared with you," William said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Decisions that were made long before we met, obligations that I thought I could manage alongside our happiness. I was wrong." Catherine felt her heart begin to race. What kind of decisions? What obligations? "William, we have always faced everything together. Why are you shutting me out now?" He looked at her with such tenderness that it made the distance between them feel even more cruel. "Because this time, facing it together means asking you to sacrifice more than anyone should have to sacrifice. It means asking our children to grow up in a world where their father's duty comes before their need for a present." Engaged parent, the words hung in the air between them like a physical barrier. Catherine realized that whatever was coming next would test not only their marriage, but everything she thought she knew about their life together. She also realized that William had been carrying this burden alone, and that his distance had not been about loving her less, but about loving her too much to ask her to share in his pain. "Tell me," she whispered, "whatever it is, we can find a way through it together." But even as she spoke the words, Catherine could see in William's expression that he had already convinced himself there was no way through, only a way out. The man she had fallen in love with, the father of her children, the person she had built her entire adult life around, was preparing to walk away from everything they had created together. William walked to the window and stared out at the dark gardens beyond. The weight of his next words seemed to physically burden him, his shoulders sagging as if he carried the world upon them. Catherine remained perfectly still, knowing that whatever he was about to reveal would change everything between them forever. "My father is dying," William said quietly, his voice barely audible, "not in the way the public knows. The cancer has spread further than anyone realizes. The doctors have given him 6 months, perhaps less. The palace has been preparing for the transition, but there are complications no one anticipated." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face. She had known King Charles was battling cancer, but the public reports had been cautiously optimistic. "William, why didn't you tell me this sooner? We could have prepared together, supported each other through this." He turned to face her and she saw tears threatening to spill from his eyes. "Because that was just the beginning. The constitutional crisis that will follow his death is something the monarchy has never faced before. There are questions about the succession, about the role of the crown in modern Britain, about whether the institution itself will survive." Catherine moved closer, her instinct to comfort him stronger than her fear of what he might say next. "We have faced difficult times before. We can face this too. The children need both of us, especially during such a difficult period." William shook his head, and the gesture was so final that Catherine felt her heart break a little. "The advisors have made it clear that the next king must be completely dedicated to the crown. No divided loyalties, no personal relationships that might compromise difficult decisions. They want a monarch who puts the institution above everything else, including family." "That is ridiculous," Catherine said, her voice rising slightly. "You are a devoted father and husband. It makes you stronger, not weaker. Our family is not a weakness to be managed." "I know that," William replied, his voice breaking slightly, "but they do not see it that way. They see George's struggles with anxiety, Charlotte's outspoken nature, Louis's need for routine and stability. They see a future king who might choose his children's well-being over state functions, who might prioritize his wife's happiness over political necessity." Catherine felt a cold realization wash over her. "They want you to choose between the crown and your family." William nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "They have made it clear that the smoothest transition would involve me stepping back from active family life. Not divorce, not abandonment, but a gradual separation that allows me to focus entirely on my duties while protecting you and the children from the scrutiny and pressure that comes with being the immediate royal family." "And you are considering this?" Catherine asked, though she already knew the answer from the way he held himself, from the careful distance he had been maintaining. "I have been considering what is best for everyone," William said. "The monarchy needs stability. Country needs confidence in its institutions. Children need a chance to grow up without the constant pressure of being the next generation of royals. You need a chance to live your own life, to be more than just a supporting character in a story that was written centuries before you were born." Catherine stared at him in disbelief. "You are making decisions about what I need without asking me what I want. You are deciding what is best for our children without considering what they actually need, which is their father present in their lives." "I am trying to protect you," William said desperately. "All of you. Do you not see how much easier your lives would be without the constant scrutiny, the endless protocols, the knowledge that every decision you make affects millions of people easier?" Catherine's voice carried a sharp edge now. "You think losing you would make our lives easier? You think our children would be better off growing up believing their father chose duty over love?" William flinched as if she had struck him. "I am not choosing duty over love. I am choosing love over selfishness. I am choosing to sacrifice my own happiness so that you and the children can have the freedom to be truly happy." Catherine realized that William had convinced himself that leaving them was an act of love rather than abandonment. He had twisted the situation in his mind until walking away seemed like the noble choice, the sacrifice that proved his devotion rather than the betrayal it actually was. "And what about what I choose?" Catherine asked, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "What about the promises we made to each other? What about the life we built together? Do those things mean nothing when measured against the expectations of advisors and the demands of an institution?" William looked at her with such profound sadness that Catherine understood for the first time that he had already made his decision. The conversation was not about choosing between options. It was about explaining a choice that had already been made. The silence that followed stretched between them like an ocean. Catherine felt as though she was watching their life together from a great distance, seeing it clearly for the first time. All those moments over the past week suddenly made sense. William's lingering looks at the children, his careful attention to details he had previously taken for granted, the way he had been touching her face when he thought she was sleeping, as if memorizing its contours. "How long have you known?" Catherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you been planning to leave us?" William's composure finally cracked. "I have not been planning anything. I have been struggling with an impossible situation, trying to find a way to keep everyone I love safe and happy while fulfilling obligations that were placed on me before I was even born." "But you have made your choice," Catherine said, and it was not a question. "I have accepted what seems to be inevitable," William replied. The advisors have made it clear that a gradual separation is the only way to ensure a smooth transition. They have suggested that you and the children could maintain your titles and positions while living more private lives. You would be financially secure, protected, but free from the daily pressures of royal life. Catherine felt a surge of anger that surprised her with its intensity. They have made it clear. When did you stop making decisions for your own family and start letting strangers dictate our future? William's eyes flashed with his own anger. These are not strangers, Catherine. These are people who have dedicated their entire lives to preserving an institution that represents stability and continuity for millions of people. They understand the broader implications of every decision in ways that you and I cannot understand that our children need their father. Catherine shot back. I understand that a marriage requires both partners to be present and committed. I understand that love means fighting for each other, not abandoning each other when things become difficult. You think this is easy for me? William asked, his voice rising. I think I want to walk away from everything that matters to me. Every night for the past month, I have lain awake, trying to find another solution, trying to figure out how to be the king this country needs while still being the husband and father you and the children deserve. And you have concluded that it is impossible. I have concluded that trying to be both would result in failing at everything. William said, Dad would be a distracted king, constantly worried about my family's happiness instead of focusing on the nation's needs. I would be an absent father, always choosing state functions over school plays and family dinners. I would be a husband who disappoints you by never being fully present in our relationship. Catherine studied his face, seeing the genuine anguish there. So your solution is to guarantee that disappointment by choosing to be completely absent. My solution is to ensure that you and the children have a chance at a normal life. While I fulfilled the role I was born to play, William said, George would still be in the line of succession, but he would grow up without the daily pressure of being the heir's son. Charlotte and Louis would have the freedom to choose their own paths. You would have the opportunity to be more than just a royal consort. What if I do not want those opportunities? Catherine asked. What if I chose this life, chose you and want to face whatever comes next together? William looked at her with such tenderness that Catherine felt her heart break all over again. Then you would be choosing a life of constant sacrifice, constant scrutiny, constant pressure. You would be choosing to watch our children grow up under a spotlight that will judge their every move, their every mistake, their every moment of normal childhood behavior. And you would be choosing to miss their entire childhood. Catherine replied, you would be choosing to let fear dictate your decisions rather than love. William turned away from her, staring once again into the fire. Perhaps that is the difference between us. You see this as a choice motivated by fear. I see it as a choice motivated by love. Catherine realized that they were not just arguing about the future of their family. They were arguing about the very nature of love itself. William believed that love meant sacrifice, that the greatest act of love was stepping aside to allow those you care about to flourish without you. Catherine believed that love meant commitment, that the greatest act of love was staying and fighting for the relationship, regardless of the obstacles. When Catherine asked, her voice hollow with the weight of acceptance, when do you plan to implement this gradual separation? William's shoulders sagged with relief and regret. The advisors have suggested that I begin by spending more time at official residences, gradually reducing my presence here. Eventually, you and the children would relocate to a more private residence, perhaps in the countryside, where you could live more quietly and the children. How do you plan to explain to them why their father is slowly disappearing from their lives? William's face crumpled, and Catherine saw that this was the aspect of his decision that was torturing him most. I thought perhaps we could tell them that my duties require me to travel more, that I am working to make their futures more secure. Lies, Catherine said simply. You want to build our children's future on lies? Want to build our children's future on the possibility that they might have normal, happy lives? William replied. Even if that means I cannot be part of those lives in the way I want to be. Catherine walked to the sofa and sat down heavily, the weight of the conversation crushing down on her. She looked around the room that had been their sanctuary, filled with family photos and children's artwork, scattered toys and books that told the story of their life together. Everything looked the same, but she knew that after tonight, nothing would ever be the same again. "I need you to understand something," Catherine said, her voice gaining strength. "I did not marry the future king. I married William Wales, a man who made me laugh, who worried about his brother, who wanted to make a difference in the world. I married the man who held my hand during my father's illness, who stayed up all night when George had his first fever, who danced with me in this very room when we thought no one was watching." William's face softened, and Catherine saw a flicker of the man she had fallen in love with. "I remember that night. You were wearing that blue dress, and Charlotte had spilled juice on it during dinner, and you said it did not matter because you would love me even if I was covered in juice stains every day for the rest of our lives." Catherine continued, "That is the man I married. That is the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or worse." "I meant those promises," William said, his voice breaking. "Still mean them, but I never anticipated that loving you might mean letting you go." Catherine stood and walked to him, ignoring his instinct to step back. She placed her hands on his chest, feeling his heartbeat racing beneath her palms. "Look at me," she said firmly. "Really look at me. Do I look like a woman who needs to be protected from her own life? Do I look like someone who cannot handle difficult situations?" William's eyes searched her face, and Catherine saw him really seeing her for the first time in weeks. "You are the strongest person I know," he whispered, "but strength should not be a requirement for happiness." "It is not a requirement," Catherine agreed, "but it is a choice, and I choose to be strong enough to stand beside you, whatever comes next. I choose to be strong enough to help our children navigate whatever challenges they face. I choose to be strong enough to fight for our family instead of surrendering it to people who think they know better than we do." "The pressure will be enormous," William said, but Catherine could hear the hope creeping into his voice. "The scrutiny will be unlike anything we have faced before. There will be times when I have to choose duty over family dinners, state functions over school events, and there will be times when you choose family over duty," Catherine replied, "because that is what marriage is about, making choices together, supporting each other through difficult decisions, finding balance rather than extremes." William's resolve was wavering, and Catherine could see the internal battle playing out across his features. "What if I fail at both? What if I am not the king the country needs because I am distracted by my family's needs? What if I am not the father our children deserve because I am overwhelmed by royal responsibilities?" "Then we will figure it out together," Catherine said. "We will make mistakes, and we will learn from them. We'll find ways to be present for our children while still fulfilling our obligations to the country. We will create a new model for what it means to be a royal family in the modern world. The advisors will not approve," William said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The advisors work for us, not the other way around," Catherine replied firmly. "They can offer guidance and advice, but they cannot make decisions about our family's future. Only we can do that." William reached up and covered her hands with his own. "I have been so afraid of failing everyone that I convinced myself the only solution was to step away from everything I love most. Fear is not a good foundation for major life decisions," Catherine said gently. "Love is. Trust is. Commitment is. We made promises to each other, William. We built a life together, created 3 beautiful children who need both of their parents present and engaged in their lives. I do not want to lose you," William whispered, and Catherine heard the vulnerability in his voice that he had been hiding for weeks. "Then stop trying to push me away," Catherine replied. "Stop making decisions for me and start making decisions with me. Stop assuming that protecting me means abandoning me, and start believing that loving me means trusting me to handle whatever comes next." William pulled her closer, and Catherine felt some of the tension leave his body. "I have been so focused on all the ways this could go wrong that I forgot to consider how we might make it work. We will make it work because we have to," Catherine said, "because our children are watching us, learning from us about what it means to love someone through difficult times. Because we promised each other that we would face whatever comes together." "What if the pressure becomes too much?" William asked. "What if the children suffer because of the choices we make?" "Then we will adapt," Catherine said. "We will find ways to protect them while still honoring our responsibilities. We will teach them that being part of something bigger than themselves is both a privilege and responsibility. We will show them that love means staying and fighting, not running away when things become difficult." William rested his forehead against hers, and Catherine felt the shift in him. The moment when he stopped preparing to leave and started preparing to stay. "I love you," he said. "I love our family. I love the life we have built together. Trust that love," Catherine replied. "Trust that we can find a way through this together." 3 months later, Catherine stood in the same spot by the window where this journey had begun, but everything had changed. The morning light fell across a room that felt warm and alive again, filled with the sounds of their children's laughter. Drifting up from the garden below, William's voice joined theirs, and Catherine smiled as she watched him push Louis on the swing while Charlotte tried to teach him a new song. The path they had chosen was not easy. There had been difficult conversations with advisors, heated meetings about protocol and precedent, and moments when the pressure felt almost unbearable. But they had faced each challenge together, making decisions as a family rather than allowing fear to drive them apart. William had insisted on a new approach to royal duties, one that prioritized transparency and authenticity over rigid tradition. He had been honest with the public about the challenges of balancing family life with royal responsibilities, and the response had been overwhelmingly positive. People respected his honesty and appreciated seeing a more human side of this monarchy. The children had adapted better than anyone had expected. George's anxiety had actually decreased when he realized his parents were united and committed to their family. Charlotte had become even more confident, knowing that her parents valued her strong personality rather than seeing it as a problem to be managed. Louis had flourished with the increased stability and presence of both parents in his daily life. Catherine had also found her own strength in new ways. She had taken on more challenging patronages, using her position to advocate for causes she was passionate about. She had discovered that being a royal consort did not mean being a supporting character in someone else's story. It meant being a partner in creating a story that mattered. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her turn. William appeared in the doorway, his face bright with the joy that had been missing for those terrible weeks. He no longer carried the weight of the world on his shoulders alone. He had learned to share that burden with her, to trust in their partnership. "The children are asking if you want to join our impromptu football match," William said, grinning. "I should warn you that Charlotte has appointed herself referee, and her rules are quite creative." Catherine laughed, the sound feeling natural and easy again. "I would not miss it for the world." As they walked toward the garden together, William caught her hand. "I have been thinking about that night," he said quietly, "about how close I came to losing everything that actually matters." "But you did not lose it," Catherine replied, squeezing his hand. "You chose to fight for it instead." "We chose to fight for it," William corrected. "I could not have found my way back without you showing me that love means staying, not leaving." They paused at the garden door, watching their children play. George was attempting to juggle a football while Charlotte critiqued his form, and Louis cheered enthusiastically for everyone. It was a perfectly ordinary moment, the kind that made up the fabric of family life. "There will be more difficult times," William said, his voice thoughtful. "More pressure, more decisions that feel impossible." "Yes," Catherine agreed, "but we will face them together. We will make mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward. We'll show our children that love is not about perfection. It is about commitment." William turned to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I love you for not letting me walk away. I love you for fighting for us when I was too afraid to fight for myself. I love you for trusting me enough to stay," Catherine replied. Believing that we could find a way through the darkness together, they joined their children in the garden, and for the rest of the afternoon, they were not the future king and queen. They were simply parents, playing with their children, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The weight of their responsibilities still existed, but it no longer felt crushing because they were carrying it together. That evening, after the children were tucked into bed, Catherine and William found themselves back in their private sitting room. But this time, instead of standing on opposite sides of the room, they sat together on the sofa. William's arm around Catherine's shoulders, her head resting against his chest. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had gone through with it," William said quietly. "If I had actually walked away from our family." "But you did not," Catherine said firmly. "You chose us. You chose love. You chose to believe that we could create our own path instead of following someone else's expectations." "The advisors still worry that I am not focused enough on my duties," William admitted. "They think I spend too much time thinking about family concerns." "And what do you think?" Catherine asked. William considered this carefully. "I think that being a good father and husband makes me a better leader. I think that understanding the importance of family, of love, of commitment helps me understand what really matters to the people I serve. The people love you more now than they ever have," Catherine pointed out. "They see you as someone who shares their values, their struggles, their commitment to family." "All thanks to you," William said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "You saved us, Catherine. You saved our family, saved each other," Catherine replied. "That is what partners do." Outside the palace grounds were quiet, but inside their private rooms, the Wales family was stronger than ever. They had faced the ultimate test of their love and commitment, and they had emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. They had learned that true love is not about avoiding difficult times. It is about choosing each other repeatedly, especially when that choice requires courage. Their story was far from over, but they would write the next chapters together as they had always been meant to do.